Hello, Algebraic Reasoning. Today we're going to go over our review of what we've been talking about the last 2 weeks. We call this the Inequality Test 2 review. So let's look at this problem here. All right, so we have y is greater than or equal to negative 7/3 x minus 2. And so if we're asked to graph this, as we've discussed previously, we know we want to talk about this as y equals, or think of it as y equals negative 7x minus 2, or simply y equals mx plus b, right? Where m is the slope, and we know slope to be rise over run, and b is the y-intercept, right? Where it crosses the y-axis. Now when we begin with this, we begin with b. That's kind of the running joke there as to why it's called b. It's because that's where we begin. Now note, we begin not with 2, but with negative 2. So the question begins with negative 2. Now if we look at the answer choices, it immediately means A is wrong, and also that C is wrong. And that is because both of these do not cross where? They both don't cross at negative 2. All right, very good. Now the next bit is that we need to decide what the slope is. So we know the slope is rise over run, which is negative 7/3. If that's not apparent, that's right here. Slope is negative 7/3. This means we go down 7 and to the right 3. So let's look at B, because that's potentially the answer. I can go down 7, but we have a problem here, because if I go down 7, I'm off the grid. So instead, I'm going to go up 7 and to the left 3. And what that means is that this 7 is up and this negative 3 is to the left. So notice that however we draw a slope, right, between 2 points, you can go down and to the right. But if that is true that you can go down to the right, then if I start at the other point, that means I can go up and to the left. It has to be the case that if one is negative, the other one has to be positive if I have a negative slope, or if one is positive, the other one has to be negative. The signs have to be different. If you think about it, it doesn't make sense for it not to be the case, okay? So that means I can go up. Now, also very important, let me zoom in a little bit here. When we do this, we are going up in increments of 2. So again, want to stress, we are doing up 7 here. So we're going to go up 7. So that's going to give me 2, 4, 6, 7. And then, let me do that again. Let's do that again. Control Z. So 2, 4, 6, 7. And then we're going to go over 3. So going to the left 3. So that looks like it might work. Let's check out B. And if I graph B, 2, 4, 6, 7 over 3, that seems to work. So that's how slope operates, but that's not telling me what the answer is. Let's see next. Well, the next bit is when we get to the new part. So what we discussed the other day is that, we don't want to reuse that color, that the line under this line right here says that the final answer has to be a solid line. So that means D is going to be incorrect and B is the only thing that is left to work. Furthermore, we've discussed the fact that when we are eating Y, we shade above. So if you were eating X, we would shade below, but we are not. We are eating Y, so we shade above. And there's our answer. Okay? So that's kind of a long, kind of drawn out process that kind of summarizes what we talked about the other day. I hope that makes sense. Now let's jump to number 2. So give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and slap number 2 on there, and we'll talk about it. So here is number 2. Okay, let me zoom in. All right. So for number 2, again, we're thinking about y equals mx plus b. So the question is where do we start? So I hope everybody says that we start with the y-intercept, which is the number by itself, which is 5. So that means A is wrong. That means C is wrong. And we're left with either B or D. Okay? So when I look at this and I know the answer is either B or D, the next thing that I'm going to concern myself with is, well, I could concern myself with the slope. I'm going to piggyback off what we saw last time, which is one line is solid and the other one was dashed, right? So we notice here that one line is dashed and the other is dashed. Okay, so that's not going to help me. Okay. When I think about slope, right, we see that 3 is positive, right? And that becomes the thing that I'm paying attention to because I notice that the slopes are different. So remember, we talked about you're going up the hill. That has a positive slope. We talked about, remember, puff, puff, positive as a way to kind of remember that, right? Then we go down the hill, right? This is what we called negative nice. Negative nice. Then we're going horizontally, right? It's a horizontal line. That is 0 fun, right? 0 fun. And then you go down. And that down is undefined. Okay, so the point being, the only 2 parts of this that I really care about right now is that this is positive and this is negative. So what that means is because this right here, this slope is positive and this slope here is negative, the final result has to be 3 is positive, so it's a positive number, so it has to be B. And there's my answer. Okay? So using a little deductive reasoning, reviewing what we've talked about in the past, we can easily decipher the answer. Let's talk about number 3 next. So, number 3. In number 3, okay. In number 3, we're going to do the same bit. We're going to start with the y-intercept. The y-intercept is -2. So A is possible, B is possible, C is starting at -4, so that's impossible, and C is possible. Okay. Piggybacking with what we just finished discussing, it is a negative slope. So negative slopes are shaped like, let me do this in a different color. We're going to talk about the negative slope. So is it true? This is A is a negative slope, right? We're following the previous picture, right? This is a nice negative. Okay, it's going down. We also say that when it's negative, it makes the letter N. Okay. We can now eliminate B because B is going up, and D is still on the list. So what's the difference between A and D? Okay, well, we can see clearly that it's how you shade. So we notice that we're eating, what are we eating? We're eating Y. So that means I'm going to shade above. Remember we said Y is above X, and so when that's the case, we shade above. So D is correct, A is wrong, and you always do want to emphasize, I want to emphasize the fact that if it's multiple choice, don't just choose the right answer, see why the other ones are wrong. Okay, let's go on to the next one. All right. So here's the next one. We have y is less than or equal to -9/2 x plus 5. So again, we see plus 5. We're going to start at 5. We see that in A, that's not the case. We see that in B, that's not the case. We see that in C, that's not the case. And we see that D, it is. That is it. Note also, you can see it's not required to solve it, but you can just kind of stressing these ideas. It is a negative value, so you notice that this is, you can make the N, or it's a nice negative, right? You're going down nicely. We also see that it has a line under, which means that this should be a solid line. It's kind of hard to see because I've written over it, but it's a solid blue as opposed to a dash. And it's eating X, which means you shade below. Okay, so number 4 has to be D. Everything else is wrong. Let's move on. All right, so let's go on to the next one. And so on the next one, you're asked to solve the system of equation by graphing. Now, as previously mentioned, you can solve this problem any particular way that fits your fancy. But because it says solve via graphing, let's do that. And plus, we've been talking about graphing. So the first one, we know for sure it starts at -1. So that is going to be the y-intercept. We know the slope to be -1, which means the slope is -1 over 1 or 1 over -1. To recap, slope is rise over run. So what this means is that I'm either going to go, if we're using -1, we're going to go down 1 to the right 1, 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 or we can repeat the behavior in the other way. So up 1, left 1, up 1, left 1, up 1, left 1, up 1, left 1, up 1, left 1. And I'm going to go ahead and draw the line. Now, you know what I'm going to do? It just depends on your writing utensil. I'm going to go ahead and make this very thin so that you can see the dots. Right? The importance of this are the dots. So we'll go back to a little bigger. Now we'll graph the next one. So the next one I'll go ahead and do in blue. We're graphing this one. We're going to start at -4 because that's the y-intercept. This one goes up 1 over 2. Now we can quickly see that that is the point of intersection. So my answer is, let me draw the other arrow. My answer is right here, which is 2, -3. So the answer is 2, -3. The answer is 2, -3. Be careful. Remember, we do X first and then Y. So that's an important concept to think about with this as well. Okay, but just follow what we've been doing. Actually, it's pretty similar to what we've done before, using the same properties. So hopefully that's not too bad. Let's go on to the next one. So the next one, number 6, is solve the system by substitution. Again, you can use whatever method makes you happy, but since it says substitution, I am going to substitute. So we know y is equal to -8x plus 16. So I'm going to replace this y with -8x plus 16. So we have -7x plus 3. Now instead of y, literally instead of y, I'm going to put in -8x plus 16. And that equals -14. From here, we're going to solve. So we're going to distribute. We're going to get -7x minus 24x plus 48 equals -14. Okay, so 3 times -8 is -24. 3 times 16 is 48. Note, it's important that you distribute with both and that you also pay attention to your signs. So from here, the question is well, what do I do? Well, hopefully, y'all are seeing that we do have like terms. We have the -7x and the -24. Now, I always advise that you put like terms together. So you have -31x plus 48 equals -14. Now we do still have like terms, just on the opposite sides. So the next move would be to subtract 48. And then we would get -31x equals 12, carry the 1, 2 is -62. This is nice because our answer choices are nice. We divide through by -31, and x is 2. So this tells me that if x is 2, the answer has to be either A or D. If x is 2, I can substitute back that x value into either equation. I'm going to go ahead and use this one here. So we're going to have y equals negative 8 times 2 plus 16. And look at that there. We're going to get negative 16 plus 16, which is 0. So y equals 0. And there's my answer. And there's my answer. Okay? And there we have it. So hopefully that's not too bad. Let's move on to the next one. Number 7. So number 7 asks us to solve via elimination. So here, since it's saying to solve it via elimination, it makes sense that we attack this problem by elimination, right? So by adding them together. So we're going to add these two together. So when we add negative 9 plus 5, we get negative 4x. We add 3y and negative 3y. And this is why we're doing it, right? Because if we add those two together, they go away. And then we add negative 3 plus 3, and they go away. By the way, when we say go away, they become 0. So obviously, negative 4x equals 0, so x would have to be 0. So this leaves me with b as the only option. But let's make sure, right? So we're going to take this value of 0, we're going to plug back in. You can choose whatever you want to plug back in. I'm going to go ahead and plug it back into the bottom. I'm going to get 5x minus 3. Now notice, ooh, you know what? I'm going to change my mind. For whatever reason, I was so fixated on the y. I should have taken this. Let's do a different color. And I'm going to plug back into the top. And the real reason why I'm doing this, what you'll see is like, why did I switch it? Is because I saw that with the top, it had a negative associated with the x and a positive with the y, and it was vice versa with the bottom. So if x is 0, I want to play the negative one become 0 because I don't like to play with negatives, or I try my best to deal with as little as possible with negatives. I still have to deal with it here to get negative 1. But the less I have to deal with, the less the propensity towards a careless mistake transpires. In any case, b is negative 1. I'm sorry, b is the answer. 0, negative 1. Okay. All right, here comes the fun part. So we have a couple of conceptual questions left. Let's run through those real fast. So the next one is, let's see if you can recall. If it is just less than, is it a solid or dashed line? Well, that is clearly going to be a dashed line, right? If it has a line, it is a line. But this one does not have a line, so it is dashed. The answer is dashed. Okay. Here's the next one. Shade above or below? Well, we know that if it's not eating y, it's definitely eating x, which means that you would shade what? We talked about this before. We usually see y and x like this. If I had a line like so, we would shade below. And the reason why we would shade below is because it is eating x. Okay? So when the sign eats x, you shade below. When it eats y, you shade above. Okay. All right. Last one. Is the point 3, 1 a solution? So you're going to look at this graph and you're going to say 3, 1 lies directly on this point here. And so when I look at this, we have to understand what the dash means. And what the dash line means is it doesn't lie on the line. It lies everywhere to the left or below, but not on the line. So the answer here is definitely not the yeses. We can cross those out. Let's look at the no's. No, because it is located on the line, and the line is dotted. No, because it is in the shaded region. This one makes no sense, hence this one is the answer. Okay? And that's about it. So make sure you study this review. Hopefully you're going to now, if this is your first time going through, you're going to go back through and take it again for real. In any case, good luck. Send me questions if you have questions, and wish the best for you on the exam. Bye-bye for now.